Willie Freeman noticed the bruise on his wife's neck during breakfast. A yellowish-purple mark, thumb-sized, just below her ear. Monique's hand flew to cover it when she caught him staring. "Spin class got intense yesterday," she said quickly, turning back to her coffee. Willie set down his fork. He was a forensic accountant, trained to spot inconsistencies, and that explanation felt wrong. Bruises from spinning? On the neck? But Monique smiled at him. That warm smile that had made him fall in love 5 years ago, and he let it go. 2 days later, he saw another mark on her hip when she changed clothes. Dark purple, almost black. She noticed him looking and pulled her shirt down fast. Same class. New instructors really pushing us. Willie wanted to believe her. Monique worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, traveling frequently to medical conferences and hospital meetings. Their marriage had weathered her demanding schedule, his long audit seasons, the usual strains. They'd built something solid. Or so he thought. The third bruise appeared on her wrist, for distinct marks, like fingers had gripped too hard. Willie couldn't ignore it anymore. "Monique, those aren't from exercise." She laughed it off, kissed his cheek. "You worry too much. I'm clumsy, you know that." But Willie didn't know that. Monique was graceful, coordinated, careful. He'd seen her navigate crowded trade shows and slippery hiking trails without incident. This didn't add up. That evening, while Monique showered, Willie found her gym membership card and called Velocity Fitness. The receptionist, Jamie Strong, was cheerful and helpful. "Oh, Mrs. Freeman? Let me check her class attendance." A pause. That's strange. Her last check-in was 4 months ago. She hasn't attended any spin classes since March. Willie's stomach dropped. "You're sure?" "Positive. We track everything digitally. Would you like me to cancel her membership?" "No. Thank you." He hung up, his hands shaking. For months of lies. For months of bruises. For months of something terrible happening to his wife, while she smiled at breakfast and asked about his day. When Monique emerged from the bathroom, Willie was sitting on their bed, her gym card in his hand. She froze. "You haven't been to spin class in 4 months, he said quietly. "Where have you been going?" Monique's face crumpled. She tried to speak, stopped, tried again. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Willie, who's hurting you? I can't." "Monique." Willie stood, his voice firm but gentle. "Whatever this is, we face it together. But I need the truth. Right now." She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. Willie knelt beside her, waiting. Finally, she looked up with eyes so hollow and haunted that his heart broke. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you everything." She pulled up her shirt, revealing her torso. Willie's vision blurred with rage. More bruises everywhere. Ribs, stomach, sides. And on her lower back, clear handprints, like someone had grabbed her violently. "Who did this to you?" Willie's voice was barely controlled. Monique met his eyes, and what she said next shattered his world. "The same man who was at our wedding." Willie's mind raced through their wedding 5 years ago. 75 guests. Family, friends, colleagues. Who among them was now terrorizing his wife? "His name is Edward Flynn," Monique said, her voice mechanical. "He's a pharmaceutical executive. VP of sales at Meridian Pharma." Willie knew that name. Meridian was one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the region. Monique's company, Med Supply Solutions, distributed Meridian's products. But Edward Flynn at their wedding? Why was he there? He wasn't invited. He came with Lorna Ellison. Remember her? My college roommate. They were dating then. Monique wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't think anything of it. Lorna asked if she could bring her boyfriend. I said sure. What does he want from you?" The story emerged in fragments. 3 years ago, Monique had witnessed Edward at a medical conference in Seattle. She'd gone to the hotel bar after a presentation and saw him there with a doctor, Glenn Ford, a prominent oncologist. They were discussing kickbacks, illegal payments to prescribe Meridian's drugs over competitors. Specific dollar amounts, patient quotas, everything that could put both men in federal prison. Monique had been horrified but said nothing, hoping to forget it. 2 weeks later, Edward appeared at her office. "He said he knew I'd overheard," Monique continued. "He had security footage from the hotel showing me at the bar. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd destroy my career, claim I was the one facilitating kickbacks, plant evidence in my files. He works with lawyers, Willie. Expensive ones. He said he'd bury me. So you stayed quiet." "For 2 years, yes. I avoided him, tried to forget. Then last year, Meridian launched a new oncology drug, Novolix. It's supposed to treat aggressive cancers, but she took a shuddering breath. The trial data was falsified. I found out accidentally when a hospital administrator, Patty Benson, showed me confidential reports. Novolix has severe side effects they're hiding. People are dying, Willie. Willie's forensic instincts kicked in. You went to Edward. I threatened to report him to the FDA. I had copies of Patty's reports, the falsified trial data, everything. I thought I could make him stop the drug launch. Monique's voice broke. I was so stupid. Edward had laughed at her threat. He'd already prepared for this scenario. He had fabricated evidence that Monique herself had approved the falsified data, forged her signature on documents, created emails from her account. If she went to the FDA, he'd frame her as the architect of the fraud. And then he started this. Monique gestured to her bruises. 4 months ago, he said I needed to understand the consequences of defiance. He'd call me to hotel rooms during conferences, claiming we needed to discuss business. Then She couldn't finish. Willie held her as she cried, his mind already formulating plans, calculating angles, preparing for war. He said if I told you, he'd kill you, Monique whispered. He has connections, Willie. Dangerous people. I've been trying to protect you. Willie pulled back, looking into his wife's eyes. That ends now. We're going to destroy him, Monique. Legally, professionally, completely. But I need you to trust me. He's too powerful. I've taken down corporate fraud schemes worth hundreds of millions. I've testified in federal court against CEOs and CFOs who thought they were untouchable. Willie's voice was steel. Edward Flynn is just another criminal who thinks he's smarter than he is. He's not. For the first time in months, Monique's eyes held something other than fear. Hope, fragile but real. Willie spent the weekend building a strategy. His background in forensic accounting had taught him that criminals, especially white-collar ones, left trails. Edward Flynn would have vulnerabilities, financial records, communication logs, witnesses who could flip. Monday morning, Willie called in sick to his accounting firm and started digging. He began with Edward Flynn's background. The man was 52, divorced, no children, graduated from Stanford, MBA from Wharton, climbed Meridian's ranks through aggressive sales tactics and strategic ruthlessness. But Willie found something interesting. A sealed lawsuit from 8 years ago, settled out of court. A former employee, name redacted, had accused Edward of assault and intimidation. Willie needed allies. He couldn't go to the police yet. Edward's fabricated evidence against Monique would complicate everything. He needed proof of Edward's crimes first. Then he could dismantle the frame-up. He contacted an old colleague, Lal Merritt, now an investigative journalist covering pharmaceutical industry corruption. They met at a coffee shop downtown. Edward Flynn, Lal said, pulling up files on his laptop. I've been circling him for years. Can't get anyone to talk on the record. They're all terrified. What if I could give you someone who would talk? Lal's eyes sharpened. Who? My wife. But we need protection first, and we need to take down his entire operation simultaneously. If we hit him piecemeal, he'll destroy evidence and disappear. What do you need from me? Willie laid out his plan. Lal would investigate the Novolix drug fraud while Willie traced Edward's financial records for the kickback scheme. Separately, Willie would find the woman from the sealed lawsuit. If she'd been assaulted before, she might testify now with corroboration. Lal agreed, excited by the prospect of finally breaking the story. They coordinated daily check-ins and information sharing. Willie's next move was riskier. He needed access to Meridian's internal files, which meant he needed someone on the inside. He found his target in Shane Willis, a mid-level accountant at Meridian who'd recently posted on a financial ethics forum about troubling irregularities he'd noticed at his company. Willie created a fake profile and messaged Shane, suggesting they meet. Shane was wary but agreed. Over beers at a quiet bar, Willie revealed his real identity and purpose. I think Edward Flynn is running a massive fraud scheme at Meridian, Willie said carefully. If you've noticed irregularities, you might be seeing the same thing. Shane's face went pale. Who are you really? A forensic accountant. And someone who wants to stop a dangerous man before more people get hurt. Shane didn't commit immediately, but Willie gave him his contact information and left the door open. Sometimes seeds needed time to grow. 2 weeks into his investigation, Willie received an unexpected call. Shane Willis. I'm in, Shane said without preamble. I found the irregularities you're looking for. Offshore accounts, shell companies, payments to doctors that don't match any legitimate contract. It's all there. Can you get me copies? Better. I can get you server access, but you'll need to work fast. That night, Willie remotely accessed Meridian's financial database using Shane's credentials. What he found exceeded his worst expectations. Edward had been running kickback schemes for over a decade, paying doctors millions to prescribe Meridian drugs. The Novolix fraud was just the latest iteration. But more damning, Edward had detailed records of his enforcement methods. Encrypted files containing photos and videos of the people he'd intimidated, including Monique. The files were organized like trophies, documenting his control over various individuals. Willie downloaded everything, his hands shaking with rage. The evidence was overwhelming, but he needed to be strategic about deployment. Meanwhile, Lal had located the woman from the sealed lawsuit, Danielle Bell, now living in Arizona under her married name. Lal flew out to interview her. She was initially reluctant, but when Lal mentioned there were other victims, she agreed to go on record. Her story mirrored Monique's, professional threats escalating to physical violence. Edward had assaulted her at a company retreat, then framed her for embezzlement when she threatened to report him. She'd accepted the settlement to avoid prison, her career destroyed. "I've waited 8 years for someone to stop him," Danielle said in her recorded interview. "I'll testify if it means he finally faces consequences." Willie now had the kickback evidence, the Novolix fraud documentation, assault victims willing to testify, and Edward's own encrypted files proving his pattern of abuse. Time to spring the trap. He scheduled a meeting with Edward Flynn, using Monique's email to request a confidential business discussion. Edward, likely assuming it was another intimidation session, agreed to meet at a downtown hotel conference room. Willie arrived early with Lyle and 2 other people, Leonard Dillon, an FBI agent specializing in pharmaceutical fraud, and Sylvia Howe, an assistant U.S. attorney who'd built her career prosecuting corporate criminals. When Edward walked into the conference room and saw Willie instead of Monique, his expression flickered, surprise, then amusement. "Mr. Freeman, I wondered when you'd figure things out." Edward sat down casually. "Where's your wife?" "Safe. Somewhere you'll never touch her again." Edward smiled. "Touching. But I think you're confused about leverage here. If Monique told you about our business arrangement, she probably mentioned the evidence I have against her. FDA fraud, falsified trials, kickback facilitation. She goes down with me, assuming you're foolish enough to try anything." Willie slid a folder across the table. "Your fabricated evidence against Monique? We've already proven it's falsified. Metadata analysis, forensic examination, timeline inconsistencies. You're good, Edward, but not good enough. Any lawyer worth their fee will destroy it in court." Edward's smile thinned. Willie continued. "What we do have is 12 years of financial records showing you paid illegal kickbacks to over 40 doctors. We have testimony from 2 assault victims. We have your encrypted files, very stupid to keep those, by the way, documenting everyone you victimized. And we have hospital records showing 18 deaths linked to Novolix side effects you knew about and hid." Leonard Dillon stood, showing his badge. "Edward Flynn, you're under arrest for wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy to distribute misbranded drugs, witness tampering, and assault. Additional charges will follow." Edward's composure shattered. "You can't. I have lawyers." "Your lawyers are very good," Sylvia Howe said. "But they can't defend against this much evidence. We've already frozen your offshore accounts and seized Meridian's financial servers. Your shell companies are exposed. Your co-conspirators are being arrested as we speak. It's over." As Leonard handcuffed him, Edward looked at Willie with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done. I have friends." "Had friends," Willie corrected. "Your friends are about to become very interested in cooperating with prosecutors to reduce their own sentences. You're going to federal prison, Edward. And everyone you've hurt is going to watch you go there." The case dominated headlines for weeks. Meridian Pharma's stock plummeted. The CEO resigned. Glenn Ford and 6 other doctors were arrested. Shane Willis received whistleblower protection and a substantial financial reward, while Merit's expose won a National Journalism Award. Danielle Bell testified before Congress about pharmaceutical industry abuse, advocating for stronger whistleblower protections. Edward Flynn faced 73 federal charges. His expensive lawyers negotiated a plea deal. 25 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole before 15. All assets seized to compensate victims and fund medical care for those harmed by Novelix. Monique entered therapy, working through the trauma of her abuse. Willie attended sessions with her, learning how to support her recovery. It wasn't easy, healing never was, but they faced it together. 6 months after Edward's arrest, Willie and Monique stood in their kitchen making breakfast. The bruises were long gone. Monique laughed at something Willie said, that genuine, unforced laugh he'd fallen in love with. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," Monique admitted. "For someone else to show up with threats. Not going to happen." Willie kissed her forehead. Edward's empire is destroyed, his associates are in prison or cooperating with prosecutors, and every regulatory agency is watching the pharmaceutical industry now. "You're safe." "We're safe," Monique corrected. "Because of you." "Because of us," Willie said. "You survived. You gathered evidence. You testified. You're the bravest person I know." Monique's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears this time. Healing tears. Outside their window, the morning sun rose over the city. Edward Flynn was in a federal prison cell. Dozens of doctors faced justice. A dangerous drug was pulled from the market. And Willie Freeman, forensic accountant turned unlikely hero, poured coffee for his wife and planned their future. Some battles were won in courtrooms with spreadsheets and subpoenas. This one had been won with patience, strategy, and an accountant's relentless pursuit of truth. Edward had thought he was untouchable. He'd learned otherwise. And Willie had learned that sometimes protecting the people you love meant becoming someone you never expected to be. Justice, he discovered, was just another kind of calculation. And he'd always been excellent with numbers.